Hi, I'm Joe Sorge, and welcome to the Family Law Report, where we examine the problems and challenges facing our family law system. This is part 2 of our interview with Steve Erickson from Erickson Mediation. In part 1, we covered the inappropriateness of using the adversarial courtroom as a way to settle issues in divorce. In this, part 2, we will discuss why the system pits one parent against the other. In part 3, we'll talk about a rational alternative, mediation. Steve, why do our courts choose a primary parent instead of just giving both parents equal time with the children?
That's a good question. I've tried to answer that myself. I get asked by the law students. I get asked when I do mediation trainings. As near as I can tell, and I've tried to go back and research some of the early custody cases. In the early 20s, you may see some judges writing, if they can't live together as husband and wife, they certainly can't raise their children together. We then need to put one of them in charge. When I started practicing law in 1974, we had a custodial parent, and then we had a non-custodial visiting parent. How would you like to be labeled a non-custodial visiting parent for the rest of your life?
You know, I've come to the conclusion that judges and lawyers don't want to eliminate the concept of a non-custodial visiting parent. In today's modern society, with so much emphasis placed on equality, how do we get the family courts to join the 21st century?
We've tried and tried and tried over the years to reform the court system. We've tried to get parenting plan legislation through. Just when we think we can eliminate that crazy search for who should have custody, and we get a parenting plan, we get evaluators to determine who should be the residential parent. 200 years from now, I think people are going to look back on our divorce system, and they're going to say, oh, what a primitive system they had. They hired these custody evaluators. They tried to show who's a better or worse parent, and they had all these goofy, crazy adversarial things when really this family needs some healing.
I've interviewed certain lawyers who say that it's not only the friends of the court who make money off the custody cases, but the states and the state courts also make money by keeping children from one of their parents.
In 1988, Congress passed the Family Support Act, and many say that that was passed primarily to figure out a way to get reimbursement for some of these mainly dads who were not paying their child support. The moms were on welfare, and we got to get the state to get some of that money back from these deadbeat dads, absent. And in fact, you look at the Family Support Act in the federal legislation, and it says each state shall create formulas to collect child support from the absent parent. See, again, the absent parent. It's only that small number of 4D cases that probably required the guidelines, and then everybody gets dragged into it.
You know, Steve, I looked into this, and in fact, in 1981, the states were recouping their welfare monies and putting about $300 million back into their treasuries. But then they expanded the collection program to the middle class, and the bureaucracy grew into a beast that now loses over $3 billion a year. The sad news is that the percentage of child support collected today is the same as it was when they weren't losing all that taxpayer money. As far as I'm concerned, it's just another ineffective government bureaucracy.
What you have now is we have a system that all divorces each year. There's about 1.2 million couples a year that get divorced. In my state, it's about 22,000. All 22,000 of them are supposed to apply the child support guidelines to their case. Well, the only way you can supply the child support guidelines is you got to know who's the primary parent, because it's assumed that the primary parent is spending all the money, and then the other one sends money to help out.
So we're subjecting everyone to laws that were created to address the collection of child support from welfare families? What do you hear from the other 86% who are not on welfare?
A lot of couples are saying, those child support guidelines don't work for us. We need to deviate from them because every family's different. Younger couples are saying, yeah, we're doing 50-50 time sharing. And the reason I think they're doing 50-50 time sharing is our economics and our economy require both parents to work full-time. And if they're working full-time, both of them, they need each other's help. But in the law, in the adversarial system, there's still this notion that's prevailed that we put one of them in charge. Even though we realize that more and more parents are doing joint parenting and they have to cooperate, the system is set up not to teach cooperation, as these couples need, but set up to determine right, wrong, good parent, bad parent.
Do you ever come across parents that fight over custody because the child support formulas make a huge financial difference to them?
When couples come in and they say, well, we're fighting over custody, I'll say to them, I don't know that you are, because I found that the battle over custody is usually about something else. It's about child support. You get more child support if you get custody. They may have even visited the child support calculator, and they've learned that if they've got more than 55% of the time, which is more than 13 overnights, I've sat, most of the gray hair I have is listening to people fight over whether there'll be Thursday overnights, and it's not because Thursday is a particularly desirable overnight. It pushes you over the threshold to get the difference between $300 child support and $900 child support. So what I try to do is I try to unhook the child support from the parenting schedule. And I would always ask, what does time have to do with child support? With your cost of your kids, certainly if you have your kids more time than the other parent, you're going to feed them more. Absolutely. That's going to cost you more. But there's only one other thing that you can point to, a cost that's affected by the fact you have more time. Utilities. They leave the lights on and they take hot showers and they run up my electric bill.
So are you saying these child support formulas that equate parenting time to more or less money don't really reflect the cost of raising a child? You think there's a better way to handle child support?
I'm going to try to assure them that the goal of mediation is to make sure that for both of them, when they go to bed at night, they can go to sleep knowing that they've got some plan for paying their bills. So when the one person is saying, I got to have the kids more time so I can get that $912 child support, they're really saying, I need to be able to have some measure of economic security. Both of them need that.
So the courts have turned an essential discussion about financial security into a destructive battle over the children.
But the greatest damage the court system does is for all these people that go through it, it says to them, the other is your opponent. The other is not your opponent. The other is the mother of your children or the father of your children. Kids don't need their parents in a contest. They need their parents providing the best they can for them. So that's why I'm saying it's about time we move divorce out of the court system, because it's not working. It's really not working for people.
That was part 2 in our interview series with Steve Erickson. If you would like to learn more about mediation as an alternative to family court, you might like to watch part 3 in this series. I'm Joe Sorge, and this is the Family Law Report. Thank you.